Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Childcare Bridge. Today's topic is this: everything at your center, everything at your business is your fault. For whatever reason, over the last couple of months, the conversations that I've been having with center owners have been changing. And there is a couple of reasons why things are changing, and the biggest being the economy. There is a lot of craziness that's going on within the childcare market across the U.S. There's civil unrest. I mean, as of the time that I'm recording this, at college campuses, there's a lot of craziness. And the conversations are turning to, dare I say, excuses. And they go something like this. Oh, Michael, we haven't been able to hire so that we can take on more enrollments because nobody wants to work. We can't afford to pay the salaries that they're looking for. We lose team members because of X. Our enrollments haven't grown because 3 other centers opened up within 10 miles. And the excuses kind of vary a bit. And I've been there, I've done that. And I've often found myself getting into the mode of excuses. So I love to do content, and I haven't been doing as much content, and I'll start to use an excuse. Well, I needed to do X, or X took a higher priority. But in reality, when I then started to do a time audit and really got serious with myself, I realized if I really wanted to get it done, I would have gotten it done. And it's really about priorities. What am I putting as priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3? So what I want you to think about today, and I'm going to give you a couple of actionable strategies based on the conversations that I have day in and day out with center owners. But what I want you to start to think about is, from a leadership standpoint, are you leading with the mentality of the buck stops and starts with you? And it's a simple yes or no. And it might be, well, I'm doing the buck stops with me, but I'm not saying the buck starts with me, or the other way around. 2 very different distinctions. I'll give you a couple of examples for myself and in my business. We have childcare center clients of varying investments, and we have some that are smaller centers that we definitely are helping, but they don't necessarily fit into our exact business model. And I could say, well, if we run into challenges, the buck stops with me, it's my fault, I'll get things solved. But in reality, it's not only that, but I also created it. I approved, hey, let's bring on somebody at this level or that level, and let's try and help, and let's be a savior when we really try and avoid those particular situations. It puts us into a very tough spot. And also the owner on the other side, their mindset, their energy, their attitude, their team, everything is off because they're having to go into survival mode. If X doesn't happen, if we don't get 10 enrollments, we can't keep the lights on. If this doesn't happen, we can't afford to keep having this new teacher on. If we don't fill that classroom, we're going to have to cut back on food. And that's obviously a little extreme, but you get the picture. Those situations are never fun. But I was often saying, well, it's my fault. I get it. It's the buck stops with me, and I need to get that corrected. But then I really started thinking about it and saying, well, yeah, I actually also started it. So all of the other stuff, all the other problems, issues, challenges that have went along the last couple of years in trying to manage these lower tier clients that were not really set up to do, all of that stuff was my fault as well. And when I started changing my mindset a little bit, the biggest thing that I started to move was, instead of me going into mode and a way of thinking of, what do you need to fix? What do you need to change? You didn't make this happen. You didn't do this. Follow up is slow. All these 10 things. I started changing it, saying, what can I do today? What's the one thing that I can do to make your life and or job easier. And every day I've been doing that with my team. And I don't go through and I ask every single person, but I might pick one person. I might pick 3 people. So one action that I want you to look at to start to increase your level of accountability, but also to start to lower the amount of friction that you have already created within your organization is to start saying, Mr. or Mrs. Director, what's one thing that I can do today or this week to help make your life better, easier, quicker, more fun, whatever way you want to phrase it. Fun is always a good one. And just see what they say. And they might say, I have absolutely nothing. And that's fine. There's always usually something. But then you ask it again a couple days later. Hey, I know you said on Monday you didn't have anything. I want to ask you again, what else can I do? I want to help support you. I want to remove friction, but I want to set you up so that you can succeed. A lot of the conversations that I've been having have been around staff, and they've been around lead follow-up. So one of the primary things that our agency does, the Parent Marketing Group, is we drive leads for centers like yours. People that raise their hand and say, hey, I want more information about your center. Now, the problem with this is that if you're not conditioned to understand that anywhere between 20% and even 90% of people that are raising their hand, they're not really in a buying state yet. Now, we can get into semantics and we can look at, there's different ad platforms, and we can talk about Google versus Facebook, and that's really usually the biggest one. Facebook, if they're seeing an ad, they're most likely just going to fill in their information and they might not be ready. It might just be one of those trying to fill it out. Google, they might be typing in a buying keyword, preschool near me. So usually the quality of the leads is a bit higher on Google, but you're also going to pay for that quality. However, even with higher quality leads, you're going to have a lot of leads that are tire kickers. You're going to have bots. You're going to have people that clicked on your ad and filled it out and they're actually looking for a job. You're going to have vendors. Like it happens all the time. And from our side, and it's always this dance, from our side, we're saying there's lots of viable leads. Even though X percentage of these leads are garbage, we've already removed them for you. Let's focus on the good ones. And we start doing audits and we start looking at, well, what happened? And the biggest thing that I have been finding, at least in the last 90 days, is that directors, because those are typically the people that are responsible for following up with the leads, have been doing the worst job at follow-up, at tracking, at additional follow-up, after tour follow-up, all of that. They have been doing the worst job that I have seen in 10 years. The worst job. And I know that because our team will go in and we actually start making calls to the point where we're actually not going to take on any new centers that don't allow us to manage and handle all of their calls, emails, everything. We're actually taking that away from the director because they're terrible at it. It's not what they have signed up for. They are much better at managing the team at the center, managing families, communication, planning events. That is what they're typically better at. Now, they still have to do the physical tour, but they're not great at making sure leads are getting nurtured and followed up with and all of that. And I'm sharing this story because a lot of these calls, when we start talking about staffing, and I'll show the data, hey, last month, and I'm just going to round up on some numbers. Last month, 100 leads came in. We eliminated 20 that didn't look like great leads. Of those 80, for whatever reason, it seems like only 30 were ever followed up with. And the follow-up on those 30 was only once. So this is why we only booked 10 tours and 5 enrollments or 3 enrollments from 100 leads. And then the conversation changes. Well, what's going on? Why is my director not doing this? And that leads me back to the first phrase that I opened up this show with, is that everything is technically your fault. If you are not inspecting what you expect, you're going to be severely disappointed. And this is one of the biggest lessons that I have learned personally in the last 2 years. There are things that I expect from my team daily, weekly, monthly. And there are times when I bury my head on particular projects that I want to just move the needle on. Sometimes they're passion projects. Sometimes they're ideally aligned with what our core 3 projects are for the quarter. But sometimes I grind grind. And I know that you've been there. You're looking at all the stuff that you can do, and then you grind on a couple of things. Maybe you go into a mode where you're grinding on the marketing, or you're grinding on getting grants, expansion, acquisition. You go into that mode, and then you might take your eye off looking at certain metrics or certain things that you're expecting to happen. But if you're not looking at those and this is an and, giving feedback, positive or negative, to the people that are giving you that data, you are letting all of these crazy things happen. If you're aware that, hey, there's a problem with lead follow-up, and you get a report for a month, and then it's the same thing the next month and the next month. And if you don't start to take action, and then 5 months later, you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough enrollments, we can't pay the bills, that is on you. That is 100% on you. So I need you to make a couple of pivots. So the first one is I want you to start to go around once a day, once a week, heck, even once a month, but I would love it if it was daily, and it doesn't, again, have to be with your whole team. What's one thing that I can do for you to make your life easier, more fun, less stressed? That's going to kill several birds with one stone. It's going to humanize you to your team a little bit. It's going to show that you're not sitting on this ivory tower, which I highly doubt that you are regardless. But there definitely is this perception issue of childcare center owners, or just owners in general, that they have all of this ridiculous amount of money and they can do everything, and they just sit in their office and play solitaire all day. So you're on the floor, you're kind of managing by walking around a little bit. It's going to improve morale, but it's also going to then allow you to start to spot some of these potential issues that you didn't necessarily know about. And that's what I'm looking for, is this concept of you let it happen. Everything is your fault. It's a result of you not looking at your core metrics and your core data every single week. Every single week. So your second action step for today, and this one literally will be a game changer for your center, is to put together a simple Excel spreadsheet of the key metrics that you know that you need to look at once a week, that your team has to fill out for you, that you then can take particular action on, give feedback, or dive into. I'm going to rattle off some of them, and there are going to be a lot of similarities across every center, but I'll give you some of them. Let's start with marketing. How many leads came in this week? How many tours happened from those leads? How many enrollments? Now, if you look at those three, you don't need to dive into follow-up yet. What you're looking for are the top-level metrics. Let's say, great, 25 leads, 1 tour, 0 enrollments. Then what you do, great, you've got that data. We're going to look at the next set, and then we're going to come back to that data in just a second. If you got some accounting metrics, some financial metrics, free cash flow, we always suggest and we help our centers deploy a methodology called Profit First. What does your run rate look like? What is the average lifetime value of an enrollment? So are they staying on average 30 months at $1,000 a month? So each enrollment is technically worth $10,000 a year over 3 years, so $30,000. You're going to obviously have to look at and know your enrollment data, part-time versus full-time. You're going to want to dig a little bit deeper and be able to look at the profitable classroom sizes. How many do you have in this classroom, that classroom, the ratios? So you build this dashboard, and then once a week, and your team, taking a step back, your team is actually going to be the people that are putting this data in for you. If you have a bookkeeper, great, every Friday or every Thursday, they're going to put these 3 metrics on this sheet for you. Whoever's doing your leads, they're going to put that data. Whoever's doing the tours puts that data. Whoever's in charge of the enrollment numbers, typically the director, they're going to put that data in, and religiously once a week. And I want it to be manual. And so, Michael, can we automate this? We can, but I want it to be manual. I want them to physically go and look. I want them to physically type in the numbers every week. And then from there, you can then start to go back to that phrase of inspect what you expect. If you were expecting from 25 leads to see 10 tours, you're then going to go down that rabbit hole and start to dig. So, great, tell me 25 leads, you booked 1 tour, tell me more. What happened? What worked? What didn't work? And you're going to start to go down a few different directions, and you're going to find a few things. Maybe the leads were all terrible, which, spoiler alert, is never the case. Never the case. We had a center that we brought on, and they were in that savior mentality, unfortunately. So we probably shouldn't have brought them on to begin with, but I wanted to try and help. Generated a ton of leads. Some of the leads were not good. Some of the leads were great. They said, Michael, all these leads are terrible, can't get a hold of anyone. Now, unfortunately, we didn't hear that for about a month. So I had my team go through and start digging. Call every one of those leads. Call, text, email. Start following up. And we started having conversations of, I never heard from the center. Never heard back. We already enrolled somewhere else. Didn't hear back. Never heard from anyone. Called in, never heard back. And there were still some viable opportunities, but unfortunately, 15 of those that we got a hold of, they already had ruined the experience. Filled out a form, never. I heard crickets. So unfortunately, that's kind of been an ongoing challenge for them. So if I dig a little bit deeper on those metrics, if you're looking at those every week, you can then dig, my financial metrics are looking a little bit off. You go to your bookkeeper, tell me a little bit more about this. Hey, we've got some opportunities here in these 3 classrooms. You can communicate that to your marketing team. If you're looking at this data on a weekly basis and giving feedback, it's not just looking, it's giving some feedback, positive or negative. And then a negative is always aligned with a potential solution. Always. There's a methodology, I think it's called 1-3-1. What's the one problem, 3 potential solutions? What's the one solution that is being recommended? And you have your team provide that back to you. Great. Enrollment data isn't looking great. That's the problem. Give me 3 solutions and then tell me which one you would like to execute. That starts to then move you out of everything is my fault to now you're being more collaborative. You're managing based off of facts, not feelings. Facts, not feelings. Now, at the end of the day, unfortunately, my statement still stands firm that everything is your fault. You are responsible for everything that is happening at your business. But the difference and the slight little tweak is that it can be positive or negative. If you're in the weeds, finally looking at the data, making decisions off of the data, you are going to move the needle. I can give you all of the data, no pun intended, that when you're looking at the data, your center performs better than all the other centers that are not. I know which centers we work with are our top performers. They have several things in common, and one of which is they look at the data every single week. It's on a spreadsheet, they're looking at it, making a few decisions, giving feedback, then they're moving back to whatever their core projects are for the quarter. Next week comes up, great, is the data the exact same? Did they implement what was suggested? Yes or no? If no, why not? And they're continuing to move. They know that they own it. It's your entity. It's your business. My message to you today, armed with the tactics that I talked about, is that it's up to you. It is up to you. You want more money. You want more impact. You want to have a better life for your family. You want more families, bigger brand, wider footprint. The buck starts and stops with you. You deserve this. You deserve this. Get out there, make it happen. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Until next week.